My name's Jenny. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a pediatric physician at Hillsborough Peds.
My name's Linda. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a nurse at Hillsborough Peds.
I'm Emily. I'm also a pediatrician at Hillsborough Pediatrics, go by she, her. And let's get started, you guys. So it's really wonderful that you guys have all joined us. We're so excited for you to be here because we love to share what we do. It's so important. There's so many opportunities. Now is a perfect time to start thinking about what your future looks like. If you're not thinking about it, you're not sure, like, don't worry, there's so much time. But then at the same time, it's nice to know where you're headed and kind of keep yourself on the straight and narrow. So we'll kind of talk about some of that stuff, okay? So this first slide, everything has meaning. So this picture, I chose this picture because I really wanted to reinforce the fact that the medical field is vast and there is not one person that completes the picture. It is a field that no matter your personality type, no matter your interests, no matter your skills, like there is an opportunity for you in this field. And so I just want to sort of make this a little bit like interactive. I want people to like, you already said one, the pediatric physical therapy, like that is something that a lot of people don't think about. Like, what are some other jobs in healthcare that you can think about that like aren't traditional, like doctor? Everybody thinks doctor or nurse, right? But there are so many other things. Like, what are some other jobs in the healthcare field that you guys know about? And that might not really be very many, because how would you know if nobody's talked to you about it? Do you have any other ideas? Anybody heard? Yeah.
Pediatric hospice stuff.
Hospice nurse, amazing. Yeah. What else, you guys? Psychiatry. Yeah.
Anesthesiologist.
Anesthesiologist. Exactly. So those are things that are kind of like doctor and nurse still. But there's all these other fields. There are people, if they're into business, if you're, you know what, I'm not a people person, but I really want to help and be involved in the healthcare field, you can do like the business side of medicine, which is so complicated and is not at all what we're trained in. So we need those people and our partners to make us successful. If you like, medical billing is amazing. We have a medical biller who works for our clinic, who we only see on Zoom because she lives in Eastern Oregon. So how cool is that? She can live wherever she wants, and she still gets to be a part of our team. We have like clinic administrators, so they're not involved directly in patient care, but again, they're kind of oversee the business of healthcare. We've got referral coordinators. These people, they basically, when we meet with our patients and we say, you know what, they need to see the pediatric physical therapist, they set that up. They work with the insurance company to make sure that that patient can get to that service that they need. Care coordination. These are people who call our families and they just kind of get to know what their you don't have to talk to me. You can talk to yourself. Care coordination, want to feel like that?
My team is vast at the clinic. I have a lot of people doing a lot of different things. So when we think about doctors and nurses, there's way more in the background that makes everything possible. So I have the referral coordinators that get our kids where they need to be that are beyond us. So when our doctors say, oh, this kid needs a higher level of care, they find someone who can see the kid as soon as possible. So they're not waiting months and months to get the help they need. I have care coordinators who call families and say, what's a barrier to you to getting in here? We haven't seen you. We've had 4 canceled appointments. Your kid needs this lab drawn. What's going on here? Is it transportation? We help with that. I just set up a new like lift thing so we can get our patients to us, because there are serious barriers that aren't always comfortable to talk about, but sometimes when we start that conversation, it's easier and we get them the help they need. We have people who works in our vaccination, and you want to talk about something, we vaccinate thousands and thousands of kids a year, and that's so important. And so we have someone who's just focusing on that, to order all those, to get them in, to make sure they're not expired. We have MAs, medical assistants, that work hand in hand with our doctors on a one-to-one basis, that literally keep the doctors doing what they need to be doing.
Okay.
So we outside of our clinic, there's really cool things like radiology, and people don't think about that, but Now we have universities in Oregon that literally teach bachelors for radiology. So you can do ultrasound, you can do CTs, you can do MRIs. We have people like, if you think our doctors pay the bills to keep the lights on in the clinic, we got people that do that, HR, human resources, that make sure that these guys are qualified to do what they're doing. So there's all kinds of really cool things that you don't have to touch blood and guts and boogers, but you can still be active in this amazing field that really keeps our country healthy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So many things, you guys, so many things. And it's so vast. I think that it's hard to even imagine, especially if your family doesn't, if you don't come from a family with healthcare involvement, it's so vast. It's hard to just even picture. So this is so glad that you're here, because this is the kind of thing that opens up your vision to like, what other things in my life could I do? Okay, so we'll come back to that some more. So next slide.
Like a finger.
Oh, you know what? Back to this slide. Before we do that, the first slide again. I wanted us to talk to you about like what our credentials are. What do those stand for? Because I think that helps to tell our story a little bit and gives you some ideas about questions as we move forward. So I'm Emily Pratt. I have an MD that stands for medical doctor. When you think about like doctor, traditionally, that's usually what people are thinking about is medical doctor, but there are other doctors. There's doctor of osteopathy. So that's a DO when you, and a lot of your physicians out in their community, like maybe your primary is a DO. That's a different pathway to do a very similar, some would say same job as that we do. And I have a PhD. So that's also a doctor of philosophy, but it's in neuroscience. So my background is that I did a combined degree program. So I started with the intention of becoming a physician scientist. So I did a MD PhD at OHSU, where my first 2 years were medical school, and then I stepped back and I did a PhD in basic science research. I studied neurobiology. Fascinating, love it. You can look me up on PubMed. I got lots of publications, but that's the path. So then I got a PhD that took about 6 years for me, and then I went back and did the rest of my my MD. So that's just like a different pathway for many people. So Dr. Fedoroff, tell us about your credentials.
So I'm Jenny Fedoroff.
Sorry, that's the old version.
She went ahead and spelled it Fedoroff. So, and so MD, just like Emily said, medical doctor, same thing. And then I have a CLC, which is a certified lactation consultant. So and there are a couple different ways to get things, extra lactation. Do you guys know what lactation is? So breastfeeding. Yeah, huge deal in pediatrics with regards to newborn care and maternal care. And so I have that extra certification, and I'm on the mother baby team in our clinic, so that we provide a lot of assistance with lactation. So that's what that's about.
Sweet. I'm Linda. I want to do a shout out to Evergreen and Glencoe, because I graduated from Glencoe High School and went to Evergreen and was one of the first groups of the health services that they had way back in the dark ages.
Wow.
So probably a lot different than what you guys did, but got my CNA, everything. I got in a bike accident when I was 8 years old and knew I wanted to be a nurse. I was in the hospital a real long time. And I was like, that person's awesome. You know, they made the time manage, like, okay, I missed my little league tournament. I was so mad, and they said, it's okay, it's okay. So, but I knew from a young age that this is what I was going to do. And it's just, where was I going to go to school to do that? So I have got my RN, there's a BSN. So with nursing, there's all different levels. So there's an associate, which takes about 3 years, a bachelor's that takes 4. And then you can go back and get your master's and specialize in teaching or being a nurse practitioner, which we also have in our clinic. So I've got my bachelor's, I'm an RN, and the CEN stands for Certified Emergency Room Nurse. I did that for 20 years, and I retired from that quick to come to the Zen of Peace. And that's why we all have gray hair. So, sorry. She and I have gray hair.
I have some, I pulled them out.
I do both. No.
Okay, before we get on to slide 2, I also want to take this opportunity to just give you a quick rundown of our history each, like what brought us to this point in our life and why we do what we do. So I, as I mentioned, have this MD PhD. So my intention was never to be a pediatrician, to be honest with you. My intention was always to be a pediatric oncologist and which is a cancer doctor. So take care of kids with cancer, and also like specifically my goal was to like take care of kids with brain cancer and to have a research lab where I did basic science. So not clinical work, but I had patients that I took care of, but actually like Petri dishes with brain cells to understand the mechanisms of cancer and hopefully come up with, you know, solutions, treatments, that sort of thing. So when I was I'll step back a little bit. So I'm the first person in my family to graduate from high school of my siblings. My parents graduated from high school. I'm the first in my family to go to college. I have two brothers who did not graduate from high school. When I was very young, we had an austere lifestyle, which basically means we were very poor. In fact, I was homeless for a little bit of time when I was a young person. And like, honestly, like graduating from high school was sometimes how did that happen? Like, it's amazing. I was really lucky that I didn't get into trouble or get caught, or, you know, like there's all the things. And but I, you know, like I'm a bright person. I will say that I'm a bright person. I do well on tests. But I wasn't really motivated for things. Like during high school, all I knew is I wanted to leave my hometown and I did not want to live with my like family my whole life. So my goal was like, go to college. So I graduated from high school and I went to the University of Washington, and I started out as an art major with ceramics, and quickly decided that I wanted a job that would pay money. So I transferred from ceramics to math, and I liked it. I liked it, but then I also, like, as a college student, I needed money to help pay for college. So I had a little bit of scholarships for my grades, but most of my scholarships came from just need grants and need aid. So part of my aid was work study. And one of the jobs that I got was in a research lab. So that's really what turned me on to research. And then I switched my major again to neurobiology. And then just as a quick story, neurobiology, and I graduated with neurobiology as well as biochemistry degrees and a minor in women's studies. And I was planning on becoming a scientist. I had no plan to go into healthcare whatsoever. And during my time as an undergraduate in college, I worked at the hospital, like as in one of the hospital units as what was called a hospital unit coordinator at that time, which is basically answers phone and make sure that the orders that the doctors put in place get down to the pharmacy and whatnot. And literally the day before I graduated from college, one of the resident doctors was talking to me and she said, "Oh my gosh, you want to do research? Like, why don't you do an MD PhD program?" And I was like, "I don't even know what that is. What is that?" So MD PhD programs are combined degree, like medical school and research, graduate school. And the amazing thing about it is you don't, like, if you are accepted into these programs, which are competitive and they are limited, your medical school is paid for. And you end up with both a medical degree as well as the PhD. So there's a lot of options in your life. So I was applying for graduate school at the time, but I kind of took a step back and I said, okay, well, the entry to medical school for MD PhD is a little different. So I took 2 years off and I worked as a science technician while I kind of studied for medical school. And then I got into this medical school program. And the reason that I'm not a pediatric oncologist today is because life happens around you and your needs change and your goals change, your priorities change. So at the end of my residency program, it was pretty clear to me that my family, I was on the East Coast. It was pretty clear to me that my family needed some help. So I moved back here and decided not to do fellowship in oncology. And my parents came to live with me. And I totally changed tracks. And I said, I'm just gonna be a pediatrician, my fallback plan. And this was never my intention, but I love it. It's amazing. And so the path was a little bit circuitous for me to get there. Okay, that's it. You can talk yet.
And her patients love her too. So, you know, things work out in the end.
Oh, yeah, yeah, very happy with my job.
So like I said, I got in a bike accident when I was 8 years old, ruptured my spleen. It was really super awesome. And my brother, it was really great. I went flying off a cliff. So he threw his 10 speed up to stop me. Very helpful. Then my Schwinn bike with the cool banana seat jammed me in my gut. And then my brother took me on the bike. We pedaled home and we had house guests. So 6 hours went by till I was like, and my parents took me in. I was the youngest of 9 kids, so stuff happens, so you can wait. So great experience. Then a year later, I get to my grand's after school because I always walk there and she's laying on the ground and not really responsive. And I'm just this little 9-year-old and I put her on a quilt and I drag her to bed and she won't let me call my mom, but I call my mom anyway and she ended up having a stroke. And so I was just like, I just want to, you know, I want to do this. So I wanted to do it forever. And in my family, it wasn't, are you going to college? It's what college are you going to? So it was a little bit different. And I had always wanted to go to the University of Portland. I went there for my 4 years to be a nurse. And it was a great experience. I love it. Went back and taught there 5 years later. And I'm just a high energy. I love blood, guts, and gore. And so I got 3 job offers when I graduated from school. And one was in pediatrics up at Dornbecker. One was in the ED at Quality, and one was in trauma at Emmanuel. And I went all balls and went to trauma at Emmanuel. And I spent 9 years there, which is a really long time. Most people don't last like 18 months because it's just constant. And then I had these kids. And I had plans to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a malpractice lawyer because I saw good stuff in the trauma. And I got accepted to UW and I was going to go do that. And then I had these kids and I decided I just wanted to work 36 hours a week and take care of my kids. And nursing can do that. You work 3 days a week and you get 4 days off. So what world do you get more days off than you work? Like that sounds like pretty good. So went down, moved to the ED out here because I commuted for a year and fell asleep twice on 26 and decided I don't want to end up in my unit. So moved out here to work in the ED and then joined the community at Quality.
I work at Quality. I've
Nice.
never seen you before.
Well, that's because I don't work there anymore, but I left. I left 2 years ago and I was there for 12 and a half years and I managed the emergency department there. And I got stabbed about 5 years ago
Oh, wow.
and decided something needed to change in my life. And decided I was tired of dealing with meth. So 20 years in the ED is a long time. A lot of people will go to PACU or post-operative care unit because it's easy and calm and soothing about 10 years after ED. But I was a glutton for punishment, stayed in there, loved every minute of it until it got too crazy and I decided I need to live to see another day. What am I going to do? And so my niece is one of the physicians at the place and said, "Oh, this would be a great fit for you because you need to like not get stabbed." And so been there and for the last almost 2 years on anniversary there and love it. And the kids are great. And the kids love their doctors and the doctors are great. And the nurse practitioners are great. And we literally see more kids in the clinic than I did in the ED in a year, and we're closed way more. So in the ED, it's hard because you're open 24/7, 365, so there's no rest for the wicked. But in the clinic, we're closed on Sundays, most of the day on Saturday, holidays. And we see almost 40,000 kids a year in that clinic. And what we're doing with that clinic is making kids be healthy, the next generation, and keeping them healthy and helping their mental health and just like top to bottom, we're there for thick and thin. So that's my.
Yeah, so I also come from a family like Emily, where the first person to go to college in my whole family was my dad, and that was when I was in late childhood. So I got to watch that process. Had that not happened, I don't have any idea where I would have ended up, but it wouldn't have been college. And so I ended up actually moving to Argentina for my junior year of high school. And when I got back, I didn't end up finishing high school. So I got my GED because I didn't want to have to do an extra year. You don't meet many doctors who got their GEDs, but I did not want to do an extra year of high school. And so I did that and started college a year early with the full plan to become an attorney. I had no doctors in my family, no doctor of my friends' parents. I had zero exposure other than just my own doctor's visits. So it was not on my radar at all whatsoever.
That's funny, because you want to be attorney, you want to be an attorney. I wanted to be a judge when I was growing up.
When you were 4.
Give
Yeah.
me the best judgment.
Yeah. Down.
And now you're all in medicine.
Now we're all, yeah, in pediatric medicine.
Yes.
So I went to college, I went to the University of Washington, majored in political science with a plan to go to law school. And it wasn't until my 4th year that I had an epiphany and was like, oh my gosh, let's put the brakes on. This is totally wrong for me. There were a couple things that happened. I discovered that I was really into medical topics. I was just devouring various books on medical issues. And I was like, well, this isn't going to serve me in law school. And then during some of my volunteer work, there were a couple instances of children getting hurt, getting physical injuries to their bodies. And that is what I was interested in. I didn't want to do the other stuff that I was there to do. I wanted to manage these injuries, figure out how to prevent them. And I thought, okay, all right, I think medical school might be it. So I graduated from the university. I then moved to Sweden for a year to work as a nanny, and just travel and learn Swedish and take a year to kind of settle. So I had started, I was only 20 at that point. So I had graduated earlier than I should have or would have otherwise. And then after that, I had to go back and do 2 more years of college, because there are 2 years of prerequisites or classes that are required to start medical school. And I hadn't done those because I thought I was going to law school and I was going down a political path. And so I spent 2 years at Portland State at that point, so I could be closer to my family, doing chemistry, physics, all kinds of math, biology, and a host of other things. Finished that, decided I wanted to travel again, so ended up going to medical school in Israel. Yeah, and spent 4 years there. Finished medical school and then came back home to do my pediatric residency at OHSU. And I finished that in 2014 and been practicing since.
Cool. Next slide. Okay, guys, so this is, part of what we wanted to do is let you know what the pathways are for these particular jobs. Now as we said at the beginning, there's all these other jobs out there and careers and professions like in healthcare, but for medicine and nursing, this is kind of the standard. But I think what you've heard here is like, there's not a standard pathway to get here. Like everybody has an individual route with really like non-traditional aspects to their path. So the beginning for all these jobs is to have some sort of form of graduation from high school. So actually, we've proven that you do not have to graduate from high school. You can have a graduate. What does GED stand for?
General education degree or diploma.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm even wrong right from the beginning. Happy to be wrong, but generally we graduate from high school.
Generally, yeah.
And that's where most of you are now. Some of you are in the middle school, but things to think about at this point is pretty, like, you just don't want to close any doors for yourself. That's what I like to tell people, like, do not close doors. If you do the best you can, if you don't really even know what it is you want to do, but you're destined for something, and you just kind of keep that out in the future, that will help you to say no to things that you probably should say no to, or no thank you. Literally, when your friends are drinking, when your friends are smoking, like all those things that I know, just find a way to politely say no thank you, and you just kind of keep it in your mind, like, this is why I'm saying no thank you. I have this thing out there that I'm working towards to keep me there. So, but the things that you do during this time of your life, they are important because they set you up for the next steps. So the clubs, the extracurricular activities with volunteering, the mentors that you reach out to and create relationships with during these times are really important. There are non-traditional activities, like if you are really into something, when you are writing your college essays, like you don't have to have been on the debate team or been on the football team or the soccer team. Like maybe you were just really, like I worked in high school. My family was like anti-sports, which is crazy because sports are so good for you, but they wouldn't let us play sports. So I just worked. And so that was something that I incorporated into my applications of like how that helped to develop me as a human being. If you're really into certain hobbies, like challenges that you've had as a young person, challenges that your family has experienced, even if it's not you directly, but it's things that you have kind of been peripherally involved in, like those challenges can be turned into life-changing experiences that you can express and realize that like everything that goes into you, it was like making the complete human, which is important for whatever profession you go into, because we all want to interact with complete human beings. That's like, you need to be a complete human being to do whatever it is you want to do in life. So graduate from high school. Generally, the next step is college. So I went directly from high school to college. You went directly from high school to college. You did? No, you took a year.
I lived in Argentina for a year, but I was in high school.
You were in high school. Okay.
I just started early.
So college is kind of, there's like college for all of these pathways, but for the physician pathway, traditionally college is a 4-year program. You graduate generally with a Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts. And if you know you want to be a doctor, like there's pre-med pathways, but you don't have to be pre-med. Like if you're like, literally I had people in my medical school class who really were literature majors. They did have to do the same post-bac. They had to do a little bit after college to go back to do those prerequisite science classes that are required for medical school entry. But you sort of like just find your passion, you know, in those college years, like they should be fun. They should be a time when you learn to apply yourself for hard work and be proud of the outcomes that you actually created for yourself, because it's not high school. Like it's really like an adult experience, and you need to be able to handle yourself. And like it's a time that you kind of grow into who you're going to be, I think, as a human being. Non-traditionally, I know a lot of people who definitely like started with community college first. Oregon is amazing because we have this Oregon Promise Grant. So people with a GPA of I don't know what the numbers are. We feel like it's 2.7 or higher. Do you guys know what the Oregon Promise Grant is? Do you know what the number is?
Yeah, because I just signed up for early college, it's 2.0.
The 2.0, like whatever the rules are, like the Oregon College Grant is amazing. We did not have that when I grew up in Washington State, but basically y'all, if you don't already know about it, you have a certain GPA and you're guaranteed tuition into an Oregon community college. So that is 2 years of free, excellent education that you can then transfer into a 4-year degree, which is that prerequisite. You have to have a 4-year degree to start medical school. And then medical school is a 4-year program. I mentioned the medical degree or the Doctor of Osteopathy. That's really a great pathway. That's for people who maybe are a little bit more interested in the physical therapy or the chiropractor part of medicine, the like manipulating body parts. I think in the past it was kind of thought of as a little more holistic, but I don't think there's so much of a difference between those two pathways at this point. But they're both amazing, lots of opportunities. And again, some non-traditional pathways are like combined degree programs. So I did the MD PhD pathway. This is generally for people who think they're going to be a physician scientist. But there's other pathways here. You can have a MD JD. So, you know, if you really are like committed, you're like, I want to do law, but I want to be a doctor also. There are a couple of places in the country where you can graduate with both a law degree and a medical degree. You can do a master's of public health. We all know about public health now after the last 3 or 4 years, right? Like these are the people who were, this is like Anthony Fauci, like these are the people who were making decisions about how we stay safe during this COVID pandemic and understanding how diseases travel within a community, not just within a human being. So that Master's of Public Health has all kinds of implications, I think, moving forward for us. But once you graduate from medical school and you're technically a doctor, you have your degree, can you go out and practice? No. I think maybe 10 years ago you could have been in Oklahoma, but now you can't. Like, no, you have to go and like learn more. So you're like book smart, but you do not know how to work things. You don't, so you do residency. Residency is like the apprenticeship of medicine. This is when you actually, it's called residency. I think it's called residency because in the past, like you lived in the hospital during your career there. There's a lot of different, the bad old days, they talk about people like staying up for 48 hours, taking care of the patients. There are rules about that, you guys, now, like that's not allowed anymore. I definitely stayed overnight in the hospital a few times during my own residency.
For 4 days straight last week.
Yeah, so during your training, there are very strict rules about how many hours you're allowed to remain in patient care. After your training, it's different rules, different rules at that point. But medical residency generally is a 3-year program, depending on what you want to do. If you want to do emergency medicine or pediatrics, it's a 3-year residency. If you want to be a surgeon, you're like a neurosurgeon, your residency might be 8 years. Like you can imagine that is a job that takes a lot of specialized training to let you be inside my brain. Like I want to make sure that you are well trained and monitored for a very long time. But then after residency, so you can practice. So that's where we are at this point. We have, Jenny and I have finished our residency and now we're adult doc, we're big people doctor, we can take care of people. But if I wanted to be an oncologist, I can't be an oncologist right now. I would need to go do a fellowship. So basically fellowship is a additional training after you finish your residency, nephrology,
Gastroenterology.
urology.
Pulmonology.
Yeah, like there's all critical care, like there's all these like specialized things within each field of care that you can go on that might need to be a little extra training. So this whole process, like, college 4 years, medical school 4 years, medical residency 3 years, fellowship couple years, like that stuff adds up when you think about it, right? But the end result is important because it takes that long so that you can be competent and safe to take care of the people that you're charged with. Okay, the next slide. Belinda. I made it, so she might have to fumble a little bit. I don't know.
So for a nurse, there's all different levels of nursing. So some people go in through a community college and they can get their associates in nursing. The main thing to think about with that is in the last 5 years, basically, an associate nurse can't practice in the hospitals unless they were grandfathered in, but no new associate nurses will be practicing in hospitals. So there's lots of other places to practice though. I have associate nurses that work for me in the clinic, people in the nursing homes, they work in there. But it's just something to think in mind what your end desire is. So that's about a 3-year program. Then some people go to community college for the first 2 years and transfer into a nursing program. The nursing programs are very competitive. When I first started nursing school, there was 5 nursing schools in the state of Oregon. There are now over 20 programs in Southern Washington and Oregon for nursing schools. And there are wait lists. So when you go in from the process of a community college to a 4-year program, you get sometimes waitlisted. And so that can take a few years to get into a nursing program. So that's one reason I went to the University of Portland, because if you meet their standards, you are guaranteed a spot in that program to begin with. And so that's nice with the Oregon State colleges. You go into whatever school and then you get put in a hat and they decide if you meet the standard, you get put in a hat and they pull your name out. So there's some waiting possibly. And then after 4 years, you get this cool thing called your Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. But that doesn't mean you can go be a nurse. So then you have to sit for this lovely exam called the NCLEX. And so before COVID, for those of us, that it was like over 245 questions on the test. You have 5 hours to take it. And now because of COVID, they've decreased it to like 140 to not keep people in the room so long. But you still get 5 hours, so it doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. And so the minimum is like 76 questions. And so once you pass the state board, then you are given your license to practice in nursing. So with nursing, you can only practice for a state that you're licensed in. And so whatever school you go to, that state, you'll get your license, and you can also get a license from any other state. But different states have different requirements. For example, Washington requires HIV test training that Oregon does not. California requires continuing education, Oregon does not. So you have to be aware of where you want to end up. And so sometimes that's why it's good to go to nursing school where you want to end up, because they send you on that path. But I can go anywhere and I just either have to take a test, or a lot of states have where they let you go both ways. You just get a license after paying money. So then after that, you can decide if you want to keep going, and you can go get your master's, which will usually take between 18 months and 2 years. And you can get a master's to teach nursing, or you can get a nurse practitioner, and that's where you can work. It's an advanced practice nurse, where instead of what I do, which is I help the doctors and they tell me the orders and I do them, and I take care of the patients and I find the needs of the patient. If I want to listen, sorry. So, you're so helpful. But a nurse practitioner works on their own license. So we have nurse practitioners that work work as they have their own patients and they take care of their patients without oversight. And so that's just an advanced practice. And then you can go get your doctorate of nursing, and that allows you to teach and to do all kinds of things depending on what your major is in. And then you can also do management. And so I like do the management route.
When you sent me the information, Linda, you had on here like Nike and Intel. What?
So Nike has their own nurses. Intel has their own nurses. A good friend of mine works for Intel. And so they work in like employee wellness. So like, let's say you are creating this shoe and you're so stressed out because it is not the best shoe ever. It's not gonna be good, right? And you're like, I got palpitations, I'm not feeling well at work, right? They go down to like the wellness center, and the nurse there checks them out and decides, do they need to go to the emergency department? Do they need to see their doctor? Do they need to go home and rest, or can they return to work? So I've got a really good friend that does that for Intel. And so that's what I'm just trying to say, is there's so many opportunities. And if you don't want blood and guts, you don't ever have to see blood and guts. And you know what? I was so scared of needles when I became a nurse, but heck, now I'm just giving it to people. I'm not taking it. So it's all good. So don't ever let something in your brain say, well, okay, also, if you don't like math, do the whole nursing thing, because you only have to take one math class in college, statistics, which is like, sign me up, because I don't like math. So there's like opportunities, and don't let something you hear or something like make you go a certain direction, you know? Yeah.
So I'm doing the UP like nursing degree. But I was wondering if it'd be okay to like drop that now.
I'm just dying.
You guys.
So in high school, you have required math.
But it's like, it's 3 years underneath that.
Right. So first off, you do not need calculus. So if you're in calculus, don't know. But you have to have statistics. So like for me, I hated math so much that I actually took my statistics at PCC so that I could, because I also minored in Spanish. So that was another shout out on the screen. I don't know if you go to that. But if you want to go to the medical field, you better pick a foreign language and you better stick with it. So anyone, I would really say that, because it's really helpful and it's really good for your patients if you can talk to them. So, and it doesn't really matter what language, because we have everything here. So but it's awesome thing to be able to be that person for those patients.
I'm gonna be the in charge a little bit and be like, this is not actual information here. You need to talk to your advice, your like counselor.
Well, if you do
to make sure
but if she does her 3 years, that's fine for high school.
You need to talk. Do not take this as official information.
Official information, you do not need calculus for nursing. You do for med school.
For med school.
Okay.
Yeah. And calculus is rad.
That's why I said, if
It's
you don't like
also-
math, don't be a doctor.
Evergreen has asked, you guys all went to very different medical schools. What are your thoughts on A, the best schools, but then B, also what to look for while you're looking at what schools to go to?
Yeah. So the best school is the school that you go to.
Right?
That is the best school, you guys. Like literally what you make of it, who sees me? Like what you make of it is what you get from it. It does not matter what school you go to. Go to school, do your best, apply yourself. Say no thank you when your friends are passing their joints around. Like put off your, oh, I don't know, never mind. Make good choices in life. Like the best school is the school you go to. You know, there's all these US news and reports about the best colleges. There is so much controversy about those lists, you guys. They are not real. They are not real. What you need to do, if you have the opportunity, is visit a program before you commit to it and decide, like, get a feel for it. Is this a community that I fit in with? Do I feel comfortable here? Do I have do I feel like I have a setting where I can really stay focused, but also, you know, like let your hair down and have some fun, because life is not all, it should be fun. But yeah, like this, the best school, it's a little bit of an irrelevant question, because we know, all of us, we all know people who went to schools that were like, oh, but they love their job, and we don't ask, we don't have colleagues, we don't say, hey, which school did you go to? That never comes up. You have a CV and it's on your CV, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people who are committed and love what they do, and are interpersonal and friendly and respectful, and have life goals.
And if someone thinks like the best school is this huge school, but you would do better with a smaller school, a more personal school, then go where you're going to be successful. Because just because it's the best for this group of people, or this person decided this year that this is the #1 school, which you'll see often it does change. So do you really think something happened that year to make that other school better? No, so it's just like, you have to find the better fit for you. Because if you say, I'm going to go to this huge school because it's the best, and you just become a number or lost, or if you go to this tiny school and you have this huge personality, you're like, I need more, I need people, I need interaction, it's not going to be good. So you got to find what you, and don't listen to what everyone else is doing. Don't do the end thing. Do what's going to be good for you.
I was very do you want to talk? I can talk over you. I'm just saying. I mean, I'm allowed to say. I know, I'm not allowed to say. So when I was in high school, I wanted to go to MIT, and I applied for MIT, and I was accepted to MIT, but my biological father refused to provide his financial information. So I did not get any financial aid offered from MIT, and I cried for days. So I went to University of Washington, which is amazing. Back in school. As was I. Yeah. So anyhow, I mean, I just was like, thought my life was over, you guys. And I don't even care. I don't care now. I mean, it doesn't matter. Just go.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I never cared. I didn't have any aspirations for MIT. I went to UW for my undergrad, which is a good school.
Very good school.
I didn't actually enjoy it. I thought it was too big for me. It can be lonely because there are so many students, like 41,000 students total.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. And a lot of the classes in the lower levels are hundreds of students. And so you just feel like a number. And I think I could have gotten a better education at a smaller school. So I did not want to pursue something like that for medical school. And I ended up wanting to go abroad anyway. So it does not matter.
And I'm a hiring manager, and I don't ask people what their GPA was, and I don't ask them what school they went to. I mean, it'll often be in your resume, but that's not going to make or break. So don't get stuck in the numbers. Don't get stuck in the names. Don't get yourself in so much debt that you decide, I'm going to quit because I can't take more debt, all because you went to a school because it was the best.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, when you were looking abroad at school,
Yeah.
what were you looking for?
Yeah,
in a
so-
school?
For me, I was looking specifically at Israel because at that point I had decided that that's where I wanted to be.
Okay.
Long story. And there are 3 schools there, and I chose the one that required you to learn Hebrew because I am just a language geek, and I have studied lots of languages and really, really, really enjoy that. And I got accepted to that one, so I withdrew all my other applications and off I went for a very challenging 4 years of learning Hebrew and medicine.
Wow.
Next slide. Okay, you guys, so I think we've kind of talked on a lot of these already, but you know, it doesn't even matter what you're gonna do with life, but at this point in your life, anything that is worth working towards can be scary. Like you're always gonna, well, hopefully you're not always, but it is very common for you to think you're not good enough. It is very common to think that you don't belong there. We all have those little voices in our head that say, you're the imposter, and how did I get here? I don't belong here. They're going to discover me. And it is like that for no matter what you do in life. So I made this slide just to sort of think about, like, for any professional career, like some things that you might think are a barrier. So over here, like the cost of an education, you know, like medical school, nursing school, college, it can be very expensive. Like I know people who graduated with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. But on the other side of that, like if you are thoughtful about the education that you choose and what the career that you're going into, and you are committed to that, and that's where you're going to head, and you know, like it doesn't matter, like your lifetime earnings, like you come out of doctor school and you have this debt, but you're a doctor. So, I mean, it's hard, but you're a doctor, so it's going to be okay. The time spent. So I mentioned that I had, like, it took me 10 years to get through MD and PhD, and then I had 3 years of residency. It took me 5 years for college. Like altogether, I've had 27 years of education from kindergarten to all of it. And beyond that, actually, yeah, a lot. But you know, like you get older no matter what, like you're still going to be that age when you finish it. It doesn't, it's just your path. It doesn't matter. You might think, oh, this is too hard for me. It's just, but I want to do it, but it seems so hard. It is hard. It totally is hard, but you're going to work hard. Like you hope, you know,
And the difference is it's something you're interested in.
Yeah.
So it's so different from high school where it's like, they tell you you're going to take this class. They tell you you're going to take this class, but you get in here and you decide, I really love science. Well, you're going to start taking all these science classes, and like everything has prerequisites. So you're doing your English, you're doing your math, you're doing your whatever, but eventually in college you get to your passion. And then it's like, wait, like it's hard, but you're so interested. And like Jenny was saying about how she just like eats up languages, and she was eating up the medicine kind of information. And that's what you're going to get to, is this class it's interesting to me. I want to go to class. I want to learn more.
Yeah. There's blood. Yeah. Some people are like, I couldn't be a doctor or nurse because there's blood. There are so many other things, like we were saying in the beginning, like in healthcare, like you could be a radiologist where you never even have to see a human being other than on their films. You could be a pathologist where you just look at their tissue under a slide. You can, like, there's just so many options in there that aren't bloody and gory and pussy. I love a good abscess. The scary things, like it's just unknown, you know, like if you don't come from a family that has this, if you're doing anything that you don't know somebody who does it, that unknown is scary. I think it's very, very important to, I think we'll come to this at the end, but like if you don't know about something, you just gotta find somebody to ask it. Like people are so interested in helping somebody who's interested. If you just reach out, like cold call, like you just, whoever your doctor is, literally the next time you have your annual exam, because you guys are supposed to go to the doctor once a year, like just ask your pediatrician. Say, you know, I've been thinking about being a pediatrician. Like, can we talk about that sometime? That person is gonna say yes.
And if they're totally negative, 2 things. 1, find another person just to weigh it, and 2, find a new doctor. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, because you will see that. You'll have someone like my daughter right now. She really wants to be a cop, and there's so much negativity. And I say, you know what? To each their own. Figure it out. You do you. And that's what you have to realize. If it's truly a passion that you want, and it's blood and guts, and your parents think you're crazy because it's so gross. What about COVID? What about all these germs you could get? You might die of the bubonic plague. You might get monkeypox. And it's like, I tell anyone, you can get whatever going on the max. You can get whatever doing anything these days. So do what you want. Do what's going to make you happy and feel fulfilled.
I don't know what the next slide is. I think the next slide is like question slide. Where are we at with our timing, guys?
This is you, it's you. No, it's about 2:30 now, so you have plenty of time.
Okay, so I think we have lots of times for questions. Let's open it up. I have all kinds, I can talk for hours, you guys, but why don't you say if you have questions? And it's all very important. It's all very life-changing things. But any questions from anybody? Anything, you guys? Like, that's part of the awesome thing I like about being a doctor is I can ask people like the most personal questions you've ever, like a stranger I just met you 2 minutes ago and I'm asking you all about your sex life and I'm asking you all about everything. And that's like all of it. My poop, like your poop. I know so much about everybody's poop in the city.
Bristol School chart.
That's right, the Bristol stool chart. So you
What's
guys
the day in
can
your life
ask
like?
anything.
A day in my life.
What's a day in your work life like?
No, it's service.
So I have 2 young kids, so I work a little bit less than some of the other doctors. And I have a funky schedule where I work on Mondays, I work in the evenings, and then I have 2 half days, and on Friday I have a full day. And so really you can do whatever works for you. So for example, on Fridays, I round at the hospitals. So there are a few of us at clinic who round on newborns in the hospitals. And so on Fridays, I do that.
What does that mean to round?
Yeah, what does that mean to round? So that means that a word that doctors use. I don't know what the origin of round is. Is it because they were walking around the
I think
hospital?
so,
I think
yeah.
that's all it is. And
Yeah,
so it just means that I'm going to the hospital to see a patient. And so I find out in the morning, do we have any newborns that our patients are going to be patients of ours? And if we do, then I drive to either St. Vincent's or Hillsborough Medical Center. And you usually start rounding by getting into the computer and looking at all of the information that we have thus far on the patient. And in a newborn, that means looking at the mom's history. Were there complications during pregnancy? Did the baby make it full term? Did the baby come a little early? What's the baby's weight? Is the weight appropriate? Has the baby had any labs done? What do the baby's vital signs look like? Vital signs meaning heart rate, respiratory rate, how fast have they been breathing? What's their oxygen level? So all of this stuff, we very quickly go through it and figure out baby is term, normal, no concerns, or there are risk factors that I need to be thinking about. So I go through all of that and then I go meet the baby and the parents. I do my exam head to toe on the baby, make sure that everything looks like it should. And then go over some teaching with family to make sure that they are going to be as safe as possible taking a newborn baby home. After that, I finish documentation because in medicine, there's a lot of documentation. We do spend a lot of time typing into a computer, which I think that I don't know when the big EMR transfer started, but they used to just write on paper, and over the past couple decades, we've moved towards computers and documenting a lot more than they used to.
like the last 20 years.
Yeah, couple decades.
Yeah.
I was way off.
And we use computers now.
We use computers now, yeah,
Some places
Yeah.
still do paper,
yeah.
literally
It
still get
happens.
records in paper.
It does happen. So I finished that, finished my documentation, put in orders, and then I drive to clinic. And on Fridays, I'm on the mother baby team, and so I see both my patients, so that could be a well child check for a 5-year-old, or it could be a visit for somebody with ADHD where we're talking about whether or not their medications are working. And then I see all of the babies too. That would be newborns that come in a few days after the hospital. That could be a 2-week-old baby who's coming in for a well check, or it could be a baby and a mom who are struggling with breastfeeding. And then we sit down with them and try to figure out what's going on. And we have about an hour in the middle of the day for lunch. Sometimes we have meetings during that time, most of the time not. At least me. She's the boss of clinic, so she has a lot of meetings, but I usually go and breastfeed my child. And then the day ends around 5 or 5:30 and I go home to my children. That's what my day looks like on a Friday.
My day, well, I've been in management for about 10 years, so it's a little bit different than a regular nurse. But when I was a regular nurse, we worked 13-hour days, and we were on our feet the whole time, taking care of different patients and having emergencies happen and having non-emergencies happen and have them come into the emergency department and educating them about the use of the emergency department. But it was just a constant. We saw about 110 patients a day.
Wow.
But now that I'm in the clinic, I manage the clinical side of the clinic. So anyone who has touches people is kind of like my responsibility. So I start my day at Arinco. We have 2 offices. So I start there in Arinco, just making sure they have everything they need and taking stuff from the night before over to the main street. And then check on my team that's at Arinco, harass the doctors a little bit, make sure the front desk has everything they need. And then I go over to Main Street where I round and make sure everyone has what they need. I deal with unhappy families. I deal with happy families. And then I just am the facilitator for my team to make sure that our patients are getting everything they need. So that means if we're dealing with a kid in foster care and we're not getting a response, and my team's been trying to get a response, then I step in and get a response. And so it's really awesome. I give shots to kids that they need extra help holding. We give lots of vaccinations. We also do a couple injections in clinic to help patients out. One's just for brand new little preemie babies that we're trying to keep them safe. RSV is terrible. Maybe you guys have heard that term RSV in the news or whatever. So our itty bitties that are born way early are really high risk for that. So our team at the clinic has about 10 to 12 kids that we do every year to give them an extra bump. So hopefully they don't get sick during this terrible season. So that's another responsibility of mine, but it's kind of like herding cats, but I got a real great group of cats right now. And so it's super good. And it's just great because you get to talk with patients, you get to talk with families, you get to talk with professionals in all different aspects of our patients' care. And you get cool doctors and nurse practitioners to work with.
Yeah, I mean, I am the medical director at our clinic currently, and I work full time. And what that means for me is I work 4 days a week. They're pretty long days. When I have a full day of clinic, let's say I see patients from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., have an hour lunch. I often have meetings during lunch. And then I'm usually honestly at work for a couple hours after the end of my day to finish up my paperwork. And, but like I said, I have a little bit more responsibilities than just the doctoring side of things. I also do a lot for the management of the clinic. This is a private practice clinic. We have I think that like for pediatricians, one thing that sort of sets us apart, less so as time goes on, but sets us apart from our colleagues out there in the medical community, is that we have a much more holistic view of what it means to be for a healthy child. You know, we have kids who come into our clinic, and of course I want to know, are you having headaches or stomach aches or constipation? But where they also really want to know is like, are you safe at home? Are you prepared for kindergarten? Are you, is your family struggling to get food on the table? Like how, you know, it's so much more about like everything in a person's circle of existence that leads to your good health. It's not just what medicines are you taking, what vitamins are you taking. That it's so much more than that. So I think pediatricians have inherently, and in our training, we sort of think about that more than some of our colleagues. You know, I think that I joke about like being asked people questions, private questions, but like really truly that's my favorite part of my job. I literally can walk in and just be like, Anna, tell me all the details, give me the deets. And people do. And it's always shocking to me. Like, you're gonna be honest, you know, people are usually pretty honest with me. Because you get privacy, you know, you have like there's rules around patient confidentiality, and it's so important, like it's so important that I believe it's so important for every human, no matter what their age, if they're able to communicate like what's wrong with their body, to have somebody who can listen and have like just for them. And of course, like parents try to do that. But like my job is a little separate from that. And I try so hard for a 4-year-old to tell me like, what is it your body's feeling right now? And I try so hard for a 16-year-old to really like understand like what's going on in your life so that you feel safe talking to me about this symptom that you're having. So every time I walk into a room for 15 or 30 minutes, like it's just a new experience, and it's I get like, you know, so I get to see like 17 or 20 people a day, and it's all a unique individual experience every time, which I think is really special. But bottom line, 4 days a week is full time.
We have a question in the chat that asked about travel pediatric nurses,
Mhm.
pays, the pros and cons, and how you get into that field.
Yeah, really anything travel medicine is, yeah.
And it's really good. It's like, so, but if, I would say, because I've had lots of travelers work for me.
Do you guys know what travel medicine is?
So there's shortages everywhere in the medical field. And so how we kind of help those shortages, because shortages waxes and wanes. So some businesses don't want to hire all these people because they have a busy season. And then they have slow seasons. So then what do? Lay people off. So they often use travelers to fill in the needs that are missing. So if they have someone on leave, or let's say they had a baby, and so they're going to be on leave. So sometimes they call a traveler in. So travelers get paid a lot because they don't get the benefits of working at the location all the time. So they don't necessarily get medical care. They don't get retirement, things like that. So their pay goes up a lot. So an average nurse right now a brand new nurse starts at about $38.25 in the hospital. And so then travel nurse, you would look into getting somewhere between like $80 and $100 per hour. But the difference is you're paying for everything yourself. So you're not getting your health care, you're not getting your retirement, you're not getting sick leave. So if you call in sick, you don't get paid. So there's lots of different things to look at. But the number one thing I would say is that when you do traveling, you don't have relationships. So every time you go into a new place, you start from ground zero. Now I'll tell you, in healthcare, having relationships, number one, because when you're swamped, what you want to know is that your buddy down the hall has your back and is going to go give meds to this person to help you, or give this person a bath, or do that. And when you're a travel nurse, I'll tell you, sometimes you get the worst assignments. And it's hard because maybe your team's getting pummeled all the time, and it's like you get this traveler, and you're like, fine, they can finally take that because we take it all the time. So it's a different beast. It is a lot of money, and it's the first thing they'll show you. But I want to tell you guys, everything when you think about life, is if they're offering you a ton of money, there's probably a reason. So you have to weigh that cost and benefit of that. If you don't know where you want to end up, traveling's awesome because every 10 weeks you get to go to a new person. So I have a nurse that worked for me for about 3 years that's now doing travel, and she's gotten to like 26 of the states in the last 2 years. And so she just keeps going. And eventually what she's doing is finding out where she wants to end up. So where does she want to end up for her life? And that's a cool way to do it if you really don't know. But it can be a lonely way to do it.
When you're a travel nurse, does that facility, they have like housing, or do you have to secure all of that on
You
your
get a
own?
housing stipend. So sometimes they have a specific facility that they use, but others get a stipend. And I have a really good one, a friend of mine that bought a camper. And she just goes and parks it when she goes to all these places. So she just pays like $150 a month to park the camper where she goes. And then she can go to, it's just easy. She moved in her house with it. So say they give you $1,500 stipend for rent a month. Okay. She's only using $150 of that. She's pocketing that, which also when they're counting your $100 an hour, they're putting that stipend in there. So there's a lot of different things to think about.
On the travel side of medicine, it's usually called locum tenens. So when you're looking at stuff, you're like, what the heck does that mean? That's like a travel doctor. So you basically sign up to work someplace for some period of time, but you're not there for a long period of time. And then I have, like disaster medicine is a real thing. Like I have a very good friend who has traveled all over the world as an emergency medicine doctor to treat like Ebola outbreaks. He was just at the southern border helping with the influx of migrants to help people who are really sick, like basically get to the front of the line so that they can get past the border to get medical care. He's been to Haiti after earthquakes. He went to Indonesia after the tsunami. I mean, it's just like amazing the kinds of things that he has done in his career. So that's just another, like, global medicine is a whole nother like direction that you can take in medicine.
We have another question on here that says, does a pediatrician ever work alongside with neonatal? And what is the overlap with the work of both professions, as well as the educational background?
Before I came home, I've actually practiced in Nebraska for 6.5 years to pay off my student loans. And there, the pediatricians actually ran what we call a level 2 NICU. And so that's a neonatal ICU. So that's where new babies who are either very early, born very early, or are very sick, where they go. So it's like an ICU for newborns. And the pediatricians actually ran that. And a level 2 means that we could take anything 32 weeks and up, which term is anything between 37 and 42 weeks. And so we could take 32 weeks and up. That meant we were doing a lot of very intensive type medicine. We were intubating babies, so putting the tube down the throat when they couldn't breathe on their own, lots of different procedures. And so there is overlap in certain areas of the country where pediatricians will actually function as kind of light neonatologists. And then in areas like this, we don't do that, but anytime we have questions about a newborn, we're on the phone with the neonatologists. And neonatologists are pediatricians who went on to do a fellowship. So that's 3 years after your pediatric residency, where you are learning intensively all about caring for sick and preterm babies. So I would say we have quite a bit of interaction with the neonatologists.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're gonna get them after they leave the NICU.
Absolutely. So they call us on all those discharges and go over what the baby needs and what happened. Yep.
Any other questions?
Do you have any questions in here?
Well, fascinating, right? Oh, good. You're all gonna sign for your math class. Let's see.
Is there anything on that great question sheet? This is your chance to ask.
What is the salary range?
Good question.
Yeah.
So
Broad.
so big. So
Broad.
big. So for pediatrics, it's kind of crazy actually, honestly, you guys. So some of the lowest paid doctors are some of the most highly trained doctors. So like a pediatric infectious disease doctor, or a pediatric rheumatologist makes less than a pediatrician. But the highest paid are those people who do procedures like surgeons and ICU and emergency medicine. So, I mean, range wise, if you're a doctor, you're going to be doing just fine. But I've got a good friend who's a pediatric endocrinologist, which means that she's like takes care of like the hormones of the body, specializes in like diabetes is one type of thing that she takes care of. And she just got a job in LA. And her starting salary is like $140,000 a year. All the way up now, you think about somebody who is, like a pediatric emergency room doctor, like $400,000 a year. If you're a surgeon, $1 million, like it's not unfeasible to think that you might make $1 million a year.
Neurosurgery and cardiothoracic, maybe it's $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. And nursing is, I don't know, like nursing, but they make bank. I think you're really good.
Yeah, I think
Nurses
about
are-
the starting range is about 83,000 and probably the upper range is, for just an RN, a BSN is probably about 140,000. And then when you go to the, like a nurse practitioner or something, like nurse practitioners can make less than a regular nurse depending on what their field is and things like that. So it's kind of like, even if you have more education, you don't necessarily make more.
Yeah.
So, and it also really depends on what part of the country.
Yeah.
There's a very big difference in, how much you get paid as a nurse.
Same for the
As a
doctor.
physician too, in the
Yeah.
Midwest, I made about double what I could make in Portland, and it's just supply and demand and where people want to be.
And we had a follow-up question on the travel nurse. How do you become a travel nurse?
So it's super easy. There's nothing special you have to do. Most agencies will require 2 years of experience. So you get out of college, you go work somewhere for a couple of years, and then you just sign up with an agency. There's tons of agencies out there, so you want to look at each one because they offer different things. And you have to be really careful because most of the time, my number is going to be about the same, but they're going to mask it with different things like housing or with transportation relocation. So it's just a matter of looking at it, and you want to find one that are you required to do overtime? So sometimes when you sign up for a contract and you think you're going to go work 3 days a week, well, in your contract down below, it says they can work you as much as they want. And so when you sign that contract, that may mean they have you working 6 days a week. And so it's very important when it comes to travel nursing because there's not a union. Travel nursing is not unionized. A lot of nursing is unionized. And so with the unionized nursing, the prices are going to be stable. And you're going to know if I go here, it's going to be this. If I go there, it's going to be this. In travel nursing, there's not a union to protect you.
Do all nurses have to join a union?
Heck
or-
no. That's why I went to a manual because they are a non-union. And then OHSU is union. And then HMC is open shop, which means they have unions and they don't have, you can choose to be in the union or you can choose not to be in the union.
And
Which
can you
plus-
clarify what it means to be in the union?
Sure, this is like my least favorite subject in the whole world because management, unions and management don't get along. So, so to be part of a union it's a group that is formed. There's a leader of the group, an outside agency, most of the time not like nurses. It's like we were talking about how there's people behind the scenes that do the numbers and things. And so they create a union. And so the union is used to protect people so that you're getting fair wages, that you're getting fair expectations. You're not having mandatory overtime where you've worked 13 hours and they're holding you over for 4 more. So it's to keep things where you're protected and there's this person out here watching over, making sure you're being treated right. The problem as a manager with the union is that the communication no longer goes from the individual to the manager. That communication is stopped. You can't do that because you have to communicate through the union. I'm all about communication. I love talking to my employee and saying, oh man, your son's got a soccer game. Let's get you to that soccer game. We're going to do this and this person will cover and you can get to that soccer game. When a union comes in, that stops because everyone has to be treated equally. Everyone has to have those same rights. So you can't do that interpersonal one-on-one kind of negotiation. Your negotiation now goes to a higher level. So, yeah. Yes.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
Because I am part of the union
How?
actuality
Uh-huh.
and I haven't had any communication with them.
Yeah, it's a new union. There's lots of pros and cons about that union. I was there when it was getting decided upon. And there's, yeah, it's hard because unions are strongest, the biggest they are. The bigger they are, the stronger they are. And the smaller they are, they're worth the paper they're written on. And so that's what happens when you create a new union is the strength is not there yet. The buy-in is not there, both with the ownership of the facility like HMC and both with the union. The union makes their money off the people. You have to pay towards that union. Every month they take it out of your salary automatically if you work for a unionized place. So that's how they're making their money. And the fewer people, the less money they're making. So their attention's not on you, their attention's on this bigger group that's making a lot of money. When you look at like OHSU and the thousands of people that they have work up there, and you look at HMC with these little tiny numbers, who are they going to give the attention to? The thousands of people. So pros and cons of union, up to every individual. But
I feel like I was a little more like the con side.
yeah,
Because definitely unions are.
both sides, they protect you,
Yeah,
like, they can't
yes.
fire you. So see, like at will, so the nice thing about it is like, we work for an at will agency. Like if they don't want you, then they don't have you. But in a union, oh no, there is step after step after step that they have to show that they've really worked on this to try to help you and you haven't been successful. So there is that. And then you don't, so for example, what you hear about strikes, like maybe like Kaiser was going to strike recently. And so what happens is that union, instead of you not having your own lawyer, you already have this person that's protecting you and that's helping you. If everyone else is getting a raise, but your group's not, well, that's not fair. So if you don't have a union, who are you going to go up against? But now this union's here. Hey, this isn't fair. You guys gave this person a raise and this group a raise, but this group is not being paid attention to. So it's like having someone in your corner. So that's why they do it. That's why you'll see plumbers, electricians. There's unions in every field.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have another question in the chat. Could you also talk about maybe being a therapist in the medical field?
Please do. We need more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so our clinic has two behaviorists who are kind of like therapists. They're a different name, but they do a lot of interpersonal therapy and family therapy and patient therapy. There is a shortage beyond comprehension in mental health care in this country, and in our area as well. And that means everything from therapists to psychiatrists, and everything in between. I don't think I can really talk to you what that means because I haven't gone through the training, but I know that there is some advanced training for that as well. Typically, the therapists that I know have also gone to college to have a 4-year degree, and then they have some, like usually it's a master's, which is like a 2-year program. But you can have a 2 or a 4-year program for more advanced study in therapy, depending on, again, like the whole world of differences for there. So like some therapists are like clinical psychologists where they can actually make diagnosis of different mental health conditions where they might not be able to treat it, but like with medications, but they can make the diagnosis. They're therapists that you kind of think of more like talk therapy. And of course, that's a real thing, very important, but that's not, they don't generally make a diagnosis. They usually like a medical diagnosis, but they do the management of the behavioral management of whatever mental health condition that is that we're talking about. So yeah, sorry, I can't say much more than that because that's kind of all I know.
Yeah.
As a pediatrician, how old
Do I see?
are your clients?
Yeah,
Like,
we generally,
once they're 18, are they have to go on to a different doctor, or
yeah,
can
good
they
question.
continue to see you?
So I see people from age 0 to 21 years old. As a medical doctor, I can't see, even though I'm a pediatrician, like I'm allowed to treat and manage people older than 21. But my practice is I see people until 21, and that's mostly for 2 reasons. One, because like it's weird for pediatricians to see you if you're over 21. So it's just kind of conventional, but also like functionally at 21 years old, people with vaginas are supposed to start getting pap smears, and we don't do pap smears in our clinic. So I'm not doing a service by being a primary care doctor for a person with a vagina who doesn't get a pap smear. So that's kind of like the reason that I cut off. We have some colleagues in our clinic who stop at 18. And then we have some nurse practitioners who really do a very similar job as we do. They have a different training path, but they can prescribe medicines, they can make diagnosis, they have their primary care providers with their own patient panel. And they have different rules about when they can treat patients and prescribe medications, different ages. So as a general rule, like 18 to 21 is the maximum age for pediatricians. We have a few minutes left, no more questions in here. Maybe we'll have some like just little things that we could have done differently or we wish that we had done looking back, maybe not wish, but like, you know, things that I wish I had, wish I had done differently. Y'all, I love that you are like such a language hound. I mean, I wish that I had done like a foreign exchange in high school or college. I mean, that's like my biggest life regret is that I didn't go learn a language and like really like immerse myself in a different culture. I've been fortunate to do some traveling now, like as an adult, but I'm still lame and only speak English. So that the other thing that I think is so key is, especially again, if you don't have people in your family who like do this, like I didn't effing know anything about these pathways, and like I just was kind of splashing around, and like there's just, you kind of are on a belt and you like following the belt. But like just ask questions, like find yourself a mentor that's in that field and literally ask, like, would you mentor me? Like that question alone can change your life, because if you express some interest, people are going to want to, we want to take care of our little babies, you know, we want to share our knowledge. We're not greedy people. We want to see the world flourish. You know, you go into healthcare because you want to do good in the world. So like asking for a mentor, I wish I had done that differently in my life, and then like learning a language. Any little pearls or things you think are?
I started my career down in Mexico, where I worked for a couple of years, and I really liked that, and I kept going down. And then I had kids and I stopped, and I kind of wish I would have kept doing that. There's a lot of medical emergencies around the world that, you know, as a nurse, you can just throw your name in the hat and go because they need that help. So that's one thing. Honestly, I probably would have I should have gotten out of emergency medicine a little sooner, because the world's a hard place right now, and it's a lot. And so it's things to think about, you know, construction workers think about wear and tear on their body. In the medical profession, you have to think about wear and tear on your mind and soul. And so those are things to really think about. And there's a balance you have to find between your work and your life. And I think the world's so fast paced now that it's sometimes hard to do that. So that would be my pearl, is that you have to find a good balance between what makes you whole as a person and what makes you whole as a worker, and make sure one doesn't outweigh the other.
Yeah, I wish that, so I have never been very good with balance, which is something I'm having to work on now as a mom and a wife and a pediatrician. There's just no choice. It's a crash course in learning balance. But I was, you know, when I was in school, I was very much in school, and I could not be bothered to do anything other than, you know, the direction I was going. I was studying to be a doctor, and that's all that mattered in the world. So I did not pick up hobbies. I did not, and I wish that I had. I wish when I was growing up and in school or in school later that I had, you know, learned to play an instrument, that I had really kind of cultivated other interests and hobbies, because it is better for your mental health. It's better for your physical health. And so I'm doing it as a much, you know, as a full-on grown adult. And I just wish that I had done it earlier. I think it would have been good for me, and then I would be good at those things. If I had an instrument that I could just go and play for an hour, that would be amazing. So I would definitely try to find balance.
Do you guys like your jobs?
I love my job, my current job. I love my job.
What's the best thing you love about your job? And then also what's the hardest?
Yeah.
Get your boss to say right there.
Yeah, careful. I'm listening.
I don't know, I'm pretty honest with Emily. The hardest thing, gosh, what is the hardest thing? Parents. It can be hard. It can be, you know, pediatricians, it's a different thing than being an adult doctor, because we are in some ways we're like veterinarians, because a lot of times our patients cannot talk to us, they cannot advocate for themselves, and we have to go through parents. A lot of them are lovely and wonderful, and they're there because it's the most important thing in their world is their children, and they want them to be cared for. But that's not always the case, and sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's really, really difficult, and sometimes you have to almost break trust with the parent so that you can take care of the kid. You know, we have to make CPS calls or DHS calls. Those things are very difficult when we see children who are not being taken care of well. very difficult. That's the type of thing that pediatricians will take home with them and lose sleep over. The best part, oh, there are many best parts, but I love the interaction with kiddos. Another thing that's really, I think, special about pediatricians, as far as like as far as doctors go, is we just don't take ourselves very seriously. We can't. You have to be able to joke and be silly and look stupid, or else you're not going to be examining these patients. Like you have to, and it's so fun when you make these connections, when you get to watch these patients grow in front of your eyes, because we see them really frequently. They come back and they're bigger and they're doing more things, and it's super rewarding. And then also, you never, ever stop learning. Every single shift I work, I've been doing this now. I started my residency in 2011, so I'm like 12 years in to pediatrics. Every single shift I work, I learn something. I'm always looking things up to make sure that I'm practicing the most evidence-based medicine, doing the right thing by the patients. And for me, that is just profoundly rewarding, that I'm constantly improving every day so that I can provide the best care I can. Yeah.
Or
Dang, girl.
Awesome.
Dang. Glad we hired you.
to
Good.
make it feel good. Pat herself on the back. For me, I love who I work with. I love the people I work with because in the medical or the healthcare field, everyone's so different. And it's so cool because there's not two people that walk the same walk in life. And that passion, that experience all comes to the table, which helps us deal with our patients well, because they all come from different walks in life. So between our patients and my coworkers, it's awesome because every day is like exciting. The worst thing I would say insurance. So the first 20 years of my existence as an RN, I honestly never thought about insurance. In the ED, you really can't know what kind of insurance the person has. You're not supposed to look at that because you have to give treatment in the ED. So nothing's decided based on insurance. So as a nurse, like you're not supposed to know that insurance. You're not supposed to look at that. So then when going into a practice like this, it's like, okay, well, we can't send the kid here because they got this insurance. So now they need to go here, but that's a little bit longer. Like, what can we do? And it's just so much like, we just want to help people, and like insurance, like I just never experienced that till about 2 years ago. And you realize that it gets in the way. So that's my biggest.
Yeah,
That's fair.
yeah. I think that, like I said, it's so cool to walk into a room and ask a really nosy question and just have the right to do it. Just a interested person in general. And it's like my favorite thing it's just awesome. Like, you can't even imagine, you guys. The people, like, you have no idea how varied people's existences are. And we have a very special role that we can walk in and like experience that secondhand. So it's just really, really neat. The worst part of it, honestly, is the training. Like, I was really unhappy for lots of parts of my training. And that's why having that goal at the end and like being committed to reaching it is so important, because it's a hard path. Like, it is unpleasant a lot of times. Like, I had so much fun along the way, but I mean, I literally thought about stopping more than once, and I'm really glad I didn't. But just, know that it's a challenge, and that voice that gets in your head and says you're not good enough, and like, people are not gonna, like, I'm never gonna be successful at this. It's just, you just have to find a way to like kick it to the curb, because it's not real. And finding those people that again, like that mentor, that person who can get to know you and kind of give you a little bit of a guide along the way is so vital. So I love doing things like this, because I really think it's important for people to realize that like, maybe being a doctor is a non-traditional path for you. Like, it's not anything that you could have like dreamed of in life, but you totally can. You totally can. Yeah.
What skill sets do you find yourself using that you didn't know back when you started, that you're like, oh, I wish I would have maybe learned about that more in college?
well, for me, a foreign language. Like our clinic is, like a third of the families are Spanish speaking, and it's really like amazing when you can speak the language of somebody, because I have to use a phone interpreter so often, and I just feel like, and I try so hard to make sure that I still like have that connection with people, but it just is it's a step removed. So for me, like, I wish I spoke Spanish. Yeah.
For me, I hated the communication class I had to take because I felt like it was so unnatural and like they're trying to script and you have to like not feel and you just say these words, and I really hate it. But then you'll get with people with all different backgrounds and just those core communication. It's like, oh my gosh, that's why you needed to know that. That's why you need to, because it's not just speaking English or their language. It's hearing and listening and watching body movements. It's just the whole picture. And so I think everyone should have to take more than one communication class when you're dealing with healthcare, because there's so much stuff you have to be paying attention to.
I don't know that I can think of anything that I would have done differently in college. Like, I'm glad that I did a social science first, so that I had that foundation, and then sciences. Trying to think if there was something, I don't think there's anything I could have done differently along the way that would help me in my day to day. I find that the skills that we use a lot as physicians are critical thinking and trying to we're always kind of trying to figure out a diagnosis. So we get presented this human with these symptoms and this history, and we have to assimilate all of that. We have to come to some sort of a conclusion given a bunch of information, and generally we have to do it pretty quickly. And so just honing critical thinking skills is pretty important.
Yeah. You gotta be a good reader, you gotta be a good writer, you gotta be able to communicate. You have to be able to communicate in person.
Totally.
You have to communicate with your patient, and like, we try to think about family, like, I think we try to communicate at like a 6th grade reading level, because we just assume people don't understand things. And literally medicine is like learning a new language. Like I kind of speak 2 languages. I speak English and I speak medicine. And families don't speak medicine, so it's really a cool skill as a pediatrician. I think about, like, if I can explain this to a 5-year-old, and that's literally what I do. I go in the room and I explain the thing to the 5-year-old, but the family is listening to me and they are hearing, I'm really telling them, but I'm using it in 5-year-old language so that the family doesn't think I think they're dumb. But they still understand everything I just said. So like, that skill of being able to communicate and not use jargon. And then we do so much documentation. You have to be able to communicate in writing so that the person who sees that patient next knows what you did, knows your thought process, so that the insurance company who is paying for that interaction, like, knows you did what you did. So communication is just a really, I think, like, it's just a fundamental part of healthcare.
So as pediatricians, and there's so many hot topics around medicine right now, like, do you do any advocacy work and looking at, women's rights, reproductive rites, LGBTQIA, trans, do you do work around with that? Because when we look at children, within their family dynamics, and pediatricians being able to step in and be that voice at a national level of kind of changing laws, or not changing laws, but lending to for policy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, we kind of live in I think Dr. Jenny can speak more to this, just because where she has worked in the past was a little bit more of a different than the Portland metro area thinks of ourselves, at least we think of ourselves as being very progressive and open-minded about things, which there's a lot of, that's not always the case. But I'll say, like, the Hillsborough Pediatric Clinic is kind of amazing in a lot of ways. We are committed to taking care of underserved populations. We're a private practice, but more than half of our patients are Medicaid insurance, which basically means that more than half of our patients live within some sort of poverty level. And to have a private practice clinic see like that number of patients is unheard of. Like most of the time, a private practice has like 5%, 3% of their patient panel is Medicaid, and the rest of them are private insurance. And the reason I kind of point that out is because Medicaid tends to pay less for office visits and medical care than like a private insurance. So like that's just a foundational thing for Hillsborough Pediatrics for years and years and years. But we're also extremely on the forefront, and all of like Oregon, the pediatrician groups in Oregon know this about us. They will come to us so that we can be part of new and exciting projects that are on the forefront of things, because they know that we are progressive in a lot of different ways. We have for instance, like recently we were just awarded a legacy award on all the work we've done for LGBTQI trainings, and not just from a healthcare standpoint, but for every person in our clinic to have a better understanding of the experiences of people around us.
So like our billing people who like don't even talk necessarily to patients at all, they went through the training so when they're looking through charts and being respectful, and we have people who go by other names, people who go by different pronouns, and we've worked for like the last year and a half to update our systems so that we can make it a seamless process so everyone feels respected and loved and welcomed in our clinic. And you don't see it, and she didn't want to toot her horn because like it's very special practice in that way, that taking care of that 50% of the population and making them able to get the care, having 2 different offices right on the max line. I mean, these are all things that you think about to get people to be taken care of. And we've got like they come down the door, we're going to get like dental hygienists, where like every aspect of someone's life can be helped at the clinic. Or some places it's come in, you come get your well child check and you leave. And this place, we work from little babies with parents who had maybe traumatized lives growing up, and working with them to try to help them understand what they can do to not make the cycle continue, and to give that extra help, and to have those one-on-ones when not everyone thinks about, well, the parent's life is going to have an affect how the kid's life goes. So it's just, you can make your life anything, and Hillsborough Ped has really, for the community, done that, where it's like everything and holistic. And I don't think we get that enough, because you get 1 visit a year for your wellness visit, and healthcare is so much more than that. And when you don't treat it like that, your EDs fill up.
Women's health, yeah, girl. I mean, we kind of live in a state that is we're sort of blessed where we are right now, that we have access to the full spectrum of family planning. What I'm talking about is abortion care. Y'all know, like many parts of this country, that is like it's just a nightmare. So we live in a part of the country where we're really fortunate to have all options on the table for family planning. I will say, like, another pearl that I want to mention, just like to reach your goal, is to be thoughtful about your contraception. If you choose to be sexually active, please know that you could get pregnant. And I'm all pro for families when you want to be a family, when it's time for you to have a family, and making sure that you like take responsibility for your body means thinking about contraception. Yeah, so I do Nexplanon. I put Nexplanons in. I love to do that. Which is
What is that?
the Nexplanon is the little bar that lives in your arm. So it's good for 3 years, but it's really good for 5 years for contraception. You don't have to think about it. You just have it in your arm. Nobody has to know. It's an amazing option for pregnancy prevention.
How does a pediatrician navigate patients' rights? Because your patient is a child. then you have the parent. So is that what's that dance like of,
Yeah. Yeah, so there's laws around this, and they're state by state. In Oregon. It's a little bit vague, and there's almost not really a lower limit to this, but in Oregon, persons, have the right to individualized, private, confidential healthcare as it pertains to sexual health and mental health. So anybody can come see me without their parents and talk to me about those two things. And I do not have the right to talk to their family about it without that person's permission, whether they are 14 years old or 17 years old. So there are laws around it. Now it's kind of weird because those are two sort of specialized areas, but but then if I want to give you, if you want to get your vaccine for COVID, like since it doesn't fall in those categories, I have to have your parents' permission to let that happen. But it can be very challenging because I truly believe that having your family know about what's going on with you is really important, because oftentimes teenagers and adolescents think their families are not going to be supportive, or like it's just really scary to talk to them. But most of the time, and I understand not always, but most of the time, your parents, like, they want to be there and support you, and they want to try to understand, and they're willing to think about it. But sometimes navigating that like confidentiality for the patient just comes first, So families, it can be a delicate dance to not say things, but also continue to have a rapport and let the parents know that I totally respect their role in their child's life, which is more than mine. But I'm there for the child. I'm there for my patient. Like that's who I'm there to take care of.
as women in medicine, there still is underrepresentation. There's more, male doctors, and especially in some of those specialty fields. What, other than finding a mentor, what else would what challenges have you had personally? And then what suggestions would you give to other women wanting to get into this field to kind of be prepared for, and how to navigate if they run into issues?
Yeah.
So when I was practicing in Nebraska, I had a situation where I had two male pediatricians hired a couple of years after I started. And, in medicine, there's this kind of the hospitals often will encourage you to not discuss your salaries with other doctors, which is super toxic and just, well, we did discuss it, and I learned that these two newer pediatricians, less experienced, less productive, were making 10% more than I was. I wasn't going to have that. And so big point here is going to be to advocate for yourself, because as women, we don't tend to do that. We don't tend to push as hard for the things that we think we deserve and should get. And then we don't get them because you really have to advocate for yourself, because nobody else is going to do it. Anyway, so I did advocate for myself, and all said and done, it took a while, but they ended up giving me an increase in pay and made it retroactive once I finally won that battle. So that was one thing that I faced. Also, where I was practicing before, it was kind of an old boys club. And as a woman, as female physicians, we just weren't listened to as much as our male counterparts. And that is just the way it was. And that was difficult. And it's slowly changing, and it's really taking some strong female doctors to say no more. And so, yeah, I would say just advocate for yourself, know your worth, and fight for it.
In nursing, it's like 90% women, or like 86% women, 14% men. But when you get into the management aspect of nursing, it's like the opposite. So you sit there and you ask yourself, what the heck is up with that? How do you go from 86% are female, and then now 10% are the managers? So, all I'll say is I'm a numbers person and a fact person. And I feel like if you stick with that in your life, what male, female, or whatever, but especially as females, if you stick with your knowledge, if you stick with the facts, if you stick with examples, tangible, then you can't go wrong. And I think that's how you can better yourself and you can make yourself like she said, she's more productive. That's measurable. That's something you can show, and that's what you stick with, because that's how you're going to get where you need to get. And that's how you're going to advocate for yourself, is by the proof is in the pudding. Like, you did it, you can show it. And so I just don't let anyone take that away with you from you, and make sure to live your honest life.
Ditto. As a doctor, like, you will always be mistaken for the nurse, which is no disrespect, but we're not the nurse. Like, I will have in the hospitals, many times I would have a male nurse next to me, and the families would just assume that the guy next to me knew what was going on and ask him questions. And I would be like, well, wait a minute. Actually, I'm the one that's making the decisions here, politely sort of redirect them to understand our roles. And it just gets a little annoying, but honestly, at this point, it's beyond annoying, and I don't even care anymore. It doesn't matter. It's just, so there's little things like that, these little micro things that happen that, and pediatrics is much like nursing. It's mostly women who are in the field, but when you go up to the higher levels, it's the flip. It's mostly the men who are the directors of the departments and the power holders, and that's changing. But it's just a little curious, right? Like, makes you think. So get into it and join us.
Do you have mentors to help you?
Yeah, absolutely. All like through my career, I can, I think of two people in particular that I still like call and talk things through. Yeah.
What do you do for your self-care, since this is, it can be a very stressful job? How do you?
Bingo. I'm a bingo advocate.
Oh, you literally mean bingo.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, you know, so I am on the
Nice.
part of the workplace, like, professional wellness committee, and
Yeah.
I'm a fan of bingo. I think it's fun. We do it, we bring everyone together, we have a good time,
Yeah.
people get a little competitive. But I do it outside too, like a lot of the, bars around or whatever have bingo nights and whatever, and it's just fun. It's like Wednesday nights, you go. I got people from the office going on Wednesdays, so, I mean, that's what it is it's the passion, it's finding what you like, and then it carries through. Like, I mean, you won't see a pediatrician like at the park or whatever. I mean, like, it's just, it carries through with you, but super important. So if you're into sports, I have got an employee right now where we work really hard to get her to her soccer game, because that's super important. That's her outlet, that's her relief, and so find that. And I think she's totally right. Where find it early, because it'll get you through college. It will get you through all those hard years in med school or whatever. If you have that thing that you like, if it's playing your guitar after a bad day, if it's playing frisbee golf, I mean, just find something and do it. I mean, we have a doctor where it's getting her nails done. I mean, whatever it is, like, you got to have it.
I'm kind of crafty. I like to make things. I made my earrings and I also like to go to the Goodwill. It's like my zen. I love the Goodwill. We have the best Goodwills in the country here. They're amazing. Yeah.
It's a competitive sport.
Yeah, like literally this whole outfit is from the Goodwill. Not even kidding. Not even kidding.
I know this is like a safety measure, but like for piercings or like tattoos, is that like?
It's per facility, so that's really gonna range depending on where you go. But some will require you to wear like long sleeve or have them covered. Other places let them all hang out. So it really, I've worked in facilities of all of the above.
So don't close doors.
Mhm.
Be thoughtful about what you're putting in your body and never put anything in there that could be offensive to somebody.
Right,
Um,
and not somewhere you can't cover it,
Not-
because
yeah.
a lot of places will require you
Yeah.
to cover it. So like, no.
Yeah.
I was wondering, when you said you started your career in Mexico, in which part?
I studied down in Morelia, Michoacan with the University of Portland. And then I worked with Los Embajadores, which is a program that sends people from America down, like church groups and everything to start building. So I made a lot of steps and stairs with rebar and cement. And then I provided medical care down there. And my daughter's gonna do it this spring break, so I'm just like, I think it was a life-changing experience for me. And it's one reason I've always worked in a field that takes care of the minorities or those underserved. So like at Emmanuel, they care for everyone. There's no insurance issues or whatever. Quality is the same as community hospitals. Some bigger hospitals are privately owned and are for profit. And so those are things to think about where you want to work and what you want to do. And like she said, Hillsborough Peds takes care of our community, and this is what our community is. If that's what our community is, that's what our ratio should be too.
So those were some important things to look at, like, as you said, that to help pay off your student loans, you went to Nebraska. And so really looking at finding a place that aligns with what your values are. So if it's not like women friendly, cultural friendly, whatever, then like don't sacrifice yourself just to.
Yeah, and the great thing is like, don't let the dollar sign freak you out. Because like in like as a nurse, if you go take a job in Eastern Oregon, literally 5 hours maybe from your home, you're going to have your education paid for. So they'll pay back your student loans, because areas that have a hard time getting professionals in will do that. There's a lot of subsidies and things. So I think a lot of time, I mean, I spent my whole college existence worrying about money because it was so expensive where I went. And that's something I would change. And I'm trying to change that for my daughter, because college is an experience in itself that you have to respect, because it's going to carry through with you to your life.
And I wonder for Dr. Jenny, like, so I also trained in a very conservative area, but it was during my residency. So like hospital medicine is different than community medicine. But I think like, I'm going to guess that even though like the political alignment was not there where you worked, you still found people that you could connect with. And even despite those political differences, like your role in caring for their family and children, like it didn't really matter, I'm guessing.
For the most part. I mean, there were days, I had to deal with things that you generally wouldn't have to hear. Hearing opinions that were very much against my values. That's okay. Hats with things on them that were against my values. I had to, treat children with parents with swastikas tattooed on their arm, but I am treating that child. So I have to ignore that. Unfortunately, it was so that's tough.
Yeah.
But I also got to be somebody who a lot of the patients could talk to that they had never had the opportunity before. So that was special. And yes, I found people with similar values and made great friends. It wasn't all bad.
One nice thing about a profession like this is you do have opportunities to go to be in the areas where it is your community. Like there's a lot of jobs that are not professions that like you just don't have so much flexibility in your life. And these career pathways, they allow you to put yourself where you want to be. And so, I mean, that's just yet another benefit to medicine. But you live in a great place already.